Behold the kinetic fury of the Emperor's chosen. To witness the venerable Adeptus Astartes in combat is to gaze upon the ultimate pinnacle of human biological supremacy. Yet beneath the glorious heraldry lies a putrescent truth. These noble defenders are not celebrated champions, but tragically broken assets fed into an eternal galactic meat grinder. Why do the most exalted descendants of the Imperium behave like ravenous beasts? The answer lies not in their devotion, but woven deeply into their cursed transhuman DNA. This is the Black Rage, a genetic cataclysm where the mind completely shatters, trapping the warrior in a horrific, infinite loop of their father's ancient demise. As the devastation of Baal choked the stars, mathematical suicide became the only viable logistical strategy for survival against the encroaching shadow. The asylum vault overflows with our doomed brethren. Their minds have embraced the ultimate martyrdom long before their physical bodies are dismantled on the battlefield. We cannot heal this psychological desecration. We can only harness their agonizing bioalchemy, turning their tragic insanity into a weapon of absolute nihilistic destruction. This sacrament of blood is a cruel irony. The very gene seed that elevated them to demigods now acts as an inescapable corrosive poison. Unleashing the Death Company is not a heroic charge. It is the calculated expenditure of hopelessly broken assets, pointing a ravenous disease toward the enemy lines. They dive into the abyssal maw of combat, actively seeking their own destruction. Every strike is a desperate plea for the silent peace of death. Pain ceases to register. Biological systems fail under extreme trauma, yet the cursed warriors continue to fight, animated solely by the ghosts of a forgotten heresy. Die, Horus! Fall by my hands, you traitorous filth! I will tear your treacherous heart from your chest and avenge our golden father. The delusion is absolute. To the afflicted mind, the 41st millennium does not exist. There is only the agonizing memory of the Emperor's darkest hour. They do not see the apex predator of the hive mind. They only see the architect of their father's murder, demanding a tribute of blood. Their zealous fury is a weaponized tragedy. An entire brotherhood condemns to fight a war they cannot understand, against an enemy they cannot truly see. Flesh yields to monstrous chitin. Yet the failing bionic heart refuses to cease its rhythm. The curse forbids them the mercy of a swift end. Through pure, agonizing attrition, the objective is achieved. The monstrous commander is dismantled, leaving the hive swarm temporarily disorganized and spiraling into mindless confusion. The battlefield falls momentarily silent. The tactical victory is secured, bought with the agonizing expenditure of the chapter's most tragic, irreplaceable transhuman assets. Your duty is fulfilled, brother. The traitor is vanquished. The Emperor recognizes your cataclysmic sacrifice. Now I shall grant you the final, venerable peace. There are no medals for the Death Company. Only the grim, inescapable realization that their greatest reward is an executioner's cold, calculated blow. To understand this cataclysmic tragedy, one must look beyond the physical battlefield. The true slaughter occurs within the microscopic helix of their venerable transhuman biology. 10 millennia ago, their golden father was brutally eradicated by the arch-traitor. That singular moment of ultimate martyrdom echoed through eternity. The psychic shockwave of that ancient murder did not merely fade. It violently imprinted itself upon their gene seed, creating an inescapable perpetual cycle of inherited madness. It is a putrescent flaw woven into their very DNA, a ticking biological time bomb waiting to completely shatter their noble minds. For 10,000 years, the brightest apothecaries have sought a cure, but there is no mathematical salvation for a deeply fractured soul. Thus, the venerated heroes are dragged into the asylum. Hidden from the galaxy, the darkest secret of the chapter is heavily chained and locked away. Behind adamantium doors, the glorious champions degenerate into ravenous beasts. Their cognitive functions are completely erased by the overwhelming tide of hallucinatory warfare. The burden of the executioner falls upon the chaplains. They are the cruel shepherds of the damned, guiding their broken brethren toward a final, violent catharsis. Every single warrior secretly dreads the inevitable dawn when the visions begin. To succumb to the Black Rage is to be completely erased from history. Their noble identities are systematically stripped away. They are no longer individuals, but merely kinetic instruments of raw, untethered vengeance. The armor is painted abyssal black, reflecting the eternal void that has swallowed their reasoning. A visual representation of their complete psychological death. The crimson crosses mark them as already dead. They walk among the living, yet they are nothing more than ghosts armed with heavy munitions. They are no longer transhuman soldiers. They are transformed into a terrifying mechanized purgatory, ready to be unleashed upon the enemies of mankind. It is a biological payload of pure, unadulterated nihilism. A weapon forged from the deepest, most agonizing trauma known to the human species. When containment fails, the sheer magnitude of their fury is revealed. The kinetic violence they unleash is terrifying, indiscriminate, and utterly unstoppable. Only the iron will of the chaplains can direct this chaotic maelstrom. They must physically dominate the insanity to point the weapon in the right direction. The uncorrupted brethren can only watch in silent horror, witnessing the terrible, inevitable fate that slowly creeps through their own veins. They are heavily packed into orbital drop pods like a volatile disposable explosive. A tragic logistical calculation designed to shatter the enemy front lines, knowing that they too will eventually be fed into the very same unforgiving engine of destruction. It is only a matter of agonizing time. The launch sequence initiates. The doomed angels ascend toward the burning heavens, ready to actively embrace their final cataclysmic descent into the meat grinder. The descent is a mechanized purgatory. Plunging from the heavens, the doomed angels become ballistic payloads of cataclysmic wrath. Impact shatters the scorched earth. This is no tactical deployment. It is a tragically necessary attrition, feeding transhuman assets into the eternal meat grinder. The adamantium seals rupture. From the darkness, kinetic fury erupts, blind to the physical reality of the alien swarm awaiting them. To their shattered minds, the alien monstrosities are nothing but the ancient traitors of the Horus Heresy, demanding a tribute of crimson. Chaplain Lamartes directs the agonizing bioalchemy of his cursed flock. He is the cold, venerable architect overseeing this mathematical suicide. The transhuman physiology is breached repeatedly. Yet biological systems failing under kinetic fury simply refuse to die, animated by pure, blasphemous delusion. It is an abyssal display of raw carnage. Flesh and chitin merge in a blasphemous sacrament of unrelenting war. The uncorrupted brethren witness the horrific truth of their own genetic destiny. Today's venerable heroes will eventually become tomorrow's atomized ash. Reality dissolves. The omniscient delusion replaces the battlefield with the golden halls of Terra, burning in eternal, unforgivable heresy. The phantom of the arch-traitor violently mocks their agonizing sacrifice, driving the affliction ever deeper into their completely ruined psyches. Overwhelmed by sheer biological mass, another broken warrior successfully embraces the ultimate martyrdom, completely erased from the galactic record in blazing light. No tactical retreat is permitted. The calculated expenditure of human assets demands the complete and utter annihilation of both opposing forces. The irradiated soil drinks deeply of the spilled genetic vitae. It is a grotesque, nihilistic harvest upon a rapidly dying world. Weapons mechanically fail. Adamantium inevitably shatters. But the zealous fury requires no complex tools, only the inescapable drive for absolute, bloody catharsis. Distant monitors coldly track the rapid cessation of vital signs. Every single flatline is a silent, tragic testament to the inescapable genetic curse. Mechanized servitude provides relentless covering fire. A cold, clinical contrast to the boiling, uncontrollable insanity consuming the afflicted transhuman super-soldiers. Fear is a biological survival mechanism they no longer possess. They charge monolithic horrors with pure, terrifying, absolute mechanical stillness. Surgical desecration of their venerable bodies means absolutely nothing. Physical pain is merely a ghost, completely drowned out by the psychic screams of Sanguinius. They violently force their broken biological vessels deeper into the meat grinder, trading transhuman flesh for temporary, agonizing, tactical gains. The grim shepherd watches his cursed flock burn. This is not a glorious victory. It is merely delaying the inevitable, cataclysmic extinction of their bloodline. The physical enemy is dismantled, reduced to atomized ash upon the toxic soil. Yet, the true cataclysmic war within the transhuman mind has only just begun. Victory brings no solace. A tactical triumph is utterly meaningless when the victors are forever trapped in a purgatory of ancient, unforgivable betrayal. The omniscient delusion metastasizes. The shattered mind no longer distinguishes between alien monstrosities and loyal brethren. Everything breathing is a blasphemous heretic. Horus, you cannot hide behind these false faces. I see your treachery. The blood of Sanguinius demands a cataclysmic tribute of crimson. The ultimate tragedy unfolds. The venerable defenders of humanity become the very nightmare their heavily fortified world was built to repel. Loyalty is erased from the galactic record. The cursed biology demands violence, blindly feeding allied transhuman assets into the eternal, uncaring meat grinder. To look into the eyes of the afflicted is to gaze into the abyss of mathematical suicide. There is no recognition, only ravenous, bottomless hatred. Only the grim shepherd can halt the blasphemous slaughter. The chaplains must enforce brutal, agonizing compliance upon their own deeply fractured flock. Hold your kinetic fury, brother. The traitors are dismantled. Do not spill the sacred genetic vitae of our own venerable bloodline. Reason is a foreign concept to a mind undergoing surgical desecration by its own DNA. The Savior appears as the ultimate architect of their doom. The hierarchy of the chapter utterly collapses. The biological payload of pure nihilism cannot be reasoned with. It can only be violently subdued. The Pyrrhic price of survival is paid in full. The battlefield devolves into an agonizing abattoir where brother forcibly dismantles brother to preserve the Imperium. Physical trauma is the only remaining language. The chaplains administer a brutal, unforgiving sacrament of kinetic violence to force the raging ghosts back into the shadows. For a fleeting microsecond, the omniscient delusion falters. The warrior perceives the terrifying, cataclysmic reality of their own irreversible biological decay. Sanguinius. Father, why have you forsaken us to this endless, agonizing purgatory? I am broken. Clarity is the cruelest punishment. To suddenly realize the depth of one's own surgical desecration is a burden too immense for any mortal soul to bear. The red crosses are not badges of honor. They are undeniable, permanent receipts of a soul already consigned to the eternal void. The kinetic fury finally burns itself out, leaving nothing but an empty, heavily damaged vessel waiting to be completely erased from the galactic record. Logistics dictate that no transhuman material is ever truly wasted. Even a completely shattered mind contains venerable biological components vital for the chapter's desperate continuation. They are heavily chained once more, dragged from one abattoir to another, trading the bloody front lines for the suffocating, silent darkness of the asylum. The kinetic fury finally subsides, leaving only a vast, terrifying silence. The meat grinder halts its rotation, demanding a grim assessment of the catastrophic attrition. There is no glorious mourning for the fallen zealots. Only a clinical, surgical harvest of the surviving genetic vitae to ensure the Imperium's continuation. Even in total biological collapse, their cursed flesh serves a purpose. The agonizing bioalchemy demands that the corrupted lineage must be continuously preserved. For the survivors, the battle does not end. The phantom of the arch-traitor merely retreats into the abyssal corners of their ruined psyches, waiting. Some minds are too deeply fractured to be contained. Their surgical desecration is absolute, transforming them into permanent, raging vessels of historic trauma. When the omniscient delusion becomes completely irreversible, the grim shepherd must deliver the final, solemn sacrament. A necessary, calculated expenditure of a beloved brother. Strike me down, traitor! I embrace the ultimate martyrdom. My blood will drown your blasphemous rebellion in a tribute of crimson. There is profound tragedy in this catharsis. A venerable hero, erased from the galactic record not by alien claws, but by an allied executioner. The strike delivers an agonizing but necessary peace. The transhuman physiology completely fails, finally releasing the tortured soul from its eternal, hallucinatory purgatory. Another glorious defender fed into the meat grinder. The Imperium demands a high price for survival, paid exclusively in the currency of mathematical suicide. The grim architect of this demise feels no triumph, only the heavy, crushing weight of a systemic biological failure that constantly haunts his lineage. The surviving assets are hastily reclaimed. They are heavily chained and dragged back to the shadows, preserving their kinetic fury for the next apocalyptic deployment. They ascend not as triumphant conquerors, but as heavily contained biological hazards. The asylum vault eagerly awaits the return of its doomed prisoners back into the purgatory of the tower. The glorious champions are once again locked away, a shameful secret hidden deep within the chapter's fortress. The cycle of surgical desecration remains unbroken. Behind adamantium bars, the relentless bioalchemy continues to degrade whatever fragments of nobility are left. In the quiet cold of the vault, the final harvest is calculated. The chapter mourns not the loss of life, but the agonizing depletion of vital biological resources. This blasphemous sacrament is the core of their tragic existence. They drink the cursed blood, knowingly embracing the very mutation that will eventually erase them. There are no grand statues for the vanguard of the damned, only scarred adamantium and painted red crosses to mark their ultimate martyrdom. The uncorrupted brethren listen to the screams of their fathers. They stand fully aware that this cataclysmic fate is heavily encoded into their very marrow. They fight to defend a galaxy that would gladly burn them as heretics if it knew the truth. They are noble defenders, utterly doomed by an inescapable genetic curse. The towering fortress is a cataclysmic monument to hypocrisy. The Imperium worships these transhuman zealots, completely unaware of the blasphemous rot infecting their core. They are heavily chained in the dark, a necessary attrition. The glorious angels of death are reduced to rabid beasts, trapped in a relentless, agonizing bioalchemy. The biological payload must be aggressively preserved. Even from the deeply fractured minds, the venerable genetic vitae is harvested to forge the next generation of doomed weapons. This is the putrescent sacrament of their lineage. To inherit the phenomenal transhuman kinetic fury is to gladly embrace the ultimate martyrdom of the mind. The grim shepherd prepares the new flock for the meat grinder. They are taught that their inevitable mathematical suicide is the highest form of imperial devotion. Drinking the cursed blood seals their tragic destiny. It is a slow, agonizing surgical desecration that permanently rewrites their biological architecture. The ancient heresy violently awakens within the veins. The phantom pain of a murdered god completely shatters the fragile mortal psyche. The omniscient delusion demands an immediate tribute of crimson. The young mind completely fractures, instantly trapped in the endless, hallucinatory purgatory of the Horus Heresy. Another venerable soul is erased from the galactic record before ever tasting true battle. The meat grinder of their own cursed DNA is infinitely hungry. The armor of the damned is constantly prepared. The painted crosses represent an inescapable, logistical calculation of acceptable biological loss. The merciless war machine of the Imperium never halts. A new planetary system begs for salvation, demanding the immediate deployment of heavily armed, disposable transhuman assets. The logistics of horror dictate constant forward momentum. The broken brethren are aggressively packed into ballistic coffins, ready to be fed into yet another cataclysmic war zone. There is no rest for the deeply afflicted. Their agonizing bioalchemy is weaponized repeatedly actively turning their absolute despair into a devastating tactical advantage. Sealed in the dark, the omniscient delusion completely takes over. The roaring engines sound exactly like the dying screams of their golden venerable father. The phantom enemy is immortal. No matter how many physical bodies are dismantled, the ghost of the arch-traitor always returns to demand more carnage. The grim shepherd must continually lead the deeply doomed flock. It is a terrible burden, overseeing the endless mathematical suicide of his own beloved brotherhood. The ballistic payload of pure nihilism is deployed. The heavily armored angels fall from the heavens, ready to embrace the ultimate martyrdom once more. They plummet toward a foreign, uncaring soil. The vicious cycle of catastrophic attrition and agonizing bioalchemy begins entirely anew. Impact shatters the enemy lines. The Imperium's most tragic, putrescent weapons are unleashed into the very heart of the horrific maelstrom. The eternal meat grinder actively demands more viscera. For the heavily afflicted angels, there is absolutely no peace among the stars, only an endless, unforgiving war. A new dawn, a new meat grinder. The theater of war changes, but the cataclysmic performance of the damned remains eternally identical. The individuals are irrelevant, completely erased from the galactic record. Only the armor survives, carrying the inescapable, inherited madness to the next generation. Their kinetic fury is an absolute, terrifying force of nature. They do not conquer, they simply eradicate, driven by a deeply ingrained biological failure. The omniscient delusion is absolute. In their shattered minds, the 41st millennium is a lie. There is only the eternal purgatory of their father's ultimate martyrdom. The grim shepherd guides the living weapons. It is a calculated expenditure of human assets, pointing the ravenous disease precisely where the Imperium needs it most. Biological systems failing under kinetic fury are forcibly kept alive by pure, blasphemous hatred. The agonizing bioalchemy simply does not allow them the mercy of rest. There is no glorious retrieval. The fallen zealots are immediately swallowed by the unforgiving soil, another tragically necessary attrition for the survival of humanity. To embrace the ultimate martyrdom is their sole remaining objective. They actively seek their own destruction, treating heavily armored suicide as a profound religious sacrament. For every zealot that falls, another instantly takes his place in the asylum. The cycle of surgical desecration perfectly sustains itself in the shadows. The Imperium worships an angelic illusion. They pray to the noble defenders, completely blind to the blasphemous, ravenous beasts that actually hold the defensive line. The Holy Chalice holds not salvation, but a permanent biological curse, a majestic heritage utterly corrupted by a single moment of absolute, unforgivable heresy. The chaplains carry the heaviest burden of all. They are the executioners of their own family, trapped in a relentless purgatory of absolute necessity. To the afflicted, reality is completely abolished. They actively live inside a heavily weaponized nightmare, a tragic biological flaw that no Imperium technology can ever repair. The meat grinder demands constant sustenance. A tribute of crimson paid across 1,000,000 worlds simply to hold the absolute abyssal darkness at bay. The next generation willingly steps into the abattoir. They actively embrace the surgical desecration, driven by a profound yet completely tragic sense of duty. This fortress is not a sanctuary. It is a highly efficient, mechanized purgatory, designed to permanently contain the chapter's deeply held, blasphemous secret. Logistics demand the absolute preservation of the curse. The biological payload must be aggressively maintained, ensuring the meat grinder never runs empty. Behold the home of the angels. A heavily fortified tomb of noble defenders entirely doomed by an inescapable, completely cataclysmic genetic curse. The Imperium survives for another fleeting millennium. This temporary survival is purchased exclusively through the constant surgical desecration and agonizing bioalchemy of its most venerable defenders. Inside the heavily fortified walls, the cycle of mathematical suicide flawlessly restarts. The eternal meat grinder actively demands a continuous, relentless tribute of crimson. This is the cataclysmic sacrament of Sanguinius, a majestic lineage deeply cursed by an ancient, blasphemous heresy that completely, irreversibly shattered their transhuman minds. The next generation of zealots willingly embraces the ultimate martyrdom. They actively step into the mechanized servitude, heavily marching toward their inevitable, completely tragic extinction. Chaplain the Martes remains the grim architect of this nihilistic purgatory. He oversees the calculated expenditure of human assets with absolute, terrifying, mechanical stillness. The omniscient delusion of the arch-traitor will never truly fade. The phantom heavily demands unrelenting kinetic fury until the entire bloodline is reduced to atomized ash. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is absolutely no peace. There is only an endless, unforgiving universe continuously spilling their genetic vitae. If this transmission illuminated the deeply tragic lore of the Blood Angels, actively secure your connection to the Imperial Archives. Engage the like protocol and subscribe to the network. Do not let these cataclysmic records be completely erased from the galactic record the Emperor protects. But for the abyssal black warriors of the Death Company, the only true catharsis is an honorable, mathematically certain death.